The email from my mother arrived while I was in the middle of a business meeting in Tokyo. Daniel, we've decided to let Kevin move into your house. He needs it more than you do since you're never home anyway. The movers are coming tomorrow. I stared at my phone, my hand gripping it so tightly my knuckles turned white. After 3 years of working in Japan as a software development manager, I'd maintained my home in Seattle, refusing to sell it despite my parents' constant hints about Kevin needing a place to stay. Kevin, my 35-year-old brother, who hadn't held a job for more than 3 months in his entire life. Kevin, who still lived in our parents' basement, playing video games and working on his novel. Kevin, who my parents had always protected, supported, and chosen over me. Everything okay, Harrison-san? My colleague Tanaka asked, noticing my expression. Family matters, I replied, tucking my phone away. Nothing that can't wait until after our meeting. But inside I was seething. The house wasn't just any property, it was the first home I'd bought, renovated entirely with my own money, the result of years of hard work and sacrifice. More importantly, my parents had no right to give it away. They didn't own it. What they didn't know was that I'd installed a comprehensive security system 6 months ago. After catching Kevin borrowing my things during one of my brief visits home. Cameras, motion sensors, and a direct line to local law enforcement. I pulled up the security app on my phone, watching in real time as my parents and Kevin stood in my driveway, gesturing at the house like they owned it. My mother's voice carried clearly through the audio feed. Daniel's always been selfish, keeping this big house all to himself when he's in Japan. You need it more than he does, Kevin. He'll understand eventually. Kevin, wearing the same unwashed hoodie he'd had since college, nodded eagerly. Thanks, Mom. I promise I'll really focus on my writing here. This could be my big break. I watched as my father used my spare key, the one I'd trusted him with for emergencies, to open my front door. The security system immediately sent an alert to my phone. Unauthorized entry detected. I didn't respond to my mother's email. Instead, I made 3 calls, one to my lawyer, one to the local police department, and one to my neighbor, Mrs. Davidson, a retired judge who'd kept an eye on my property during my absence. They're doing what? Mrs. Davidson's voice crackled with indignation. Don't worry, Daniel. I'll document everything. Your parents may have raised you, but that doesn't give them the right to give away your property. The next morning, as promised, a moving truck pulled up to my house. I watched through the security cameras as Kevin directed movers to bring in his beaten-up furniture, including the stained futon from our parents' basement. My blood boiled as they carelessly shoved aside my carefully chosen pieces, some of which had been shipped from my travels across Asia. My phone buzzed with another email from my mother. Kevin's all moved in. He's so happy here. I know you'll be pleased to help your brother finally get his life together. Family has to support family after all. I waited until they'd finished moving everything in. Until Kevin was sprawled on his futon in my living room, gaming console already hooked up to my TV. Then I pressed a button on my phone. Instantly, the house's security system activated. Metal shutters rolled down over all the windows. A feature I'd installed after a series of break-ins in the neighborhood. The electronic locks engaged with a loud click. Through the cameras, I watched Kevin jump up in surprise. My parents, who had been helping him arrange his things, rushed to the windows. What's happening? My mother's panicked voice came through the audio feed. That's when all their phones chimed simultaneously. It was an automated message from my lawyer. This is a notice of trespassing on private property. The owner has not authorized your presence. You have 30 minutes to vacate the premises before law enforcement is notified. The chaos that ensued would have been amusing if it wasn't so infuriating. My mother tried calling me repeatedly while my father attempted to override the security system. Kevin just sat on his futon, looking bewildered. Daniel, stop this nonsense right now. My mother shouted, knowing the security system had audio capabilities. This is ridiculous. We're your family. I finally answered their call, my voice calm despite the anger churning inside me. Yes, you are family. Which makes this betrayal even worse. Betrayal? My father scoffed. We're trying to help your brother. You have a whole life in Japan, while Kevin needs to grow up. I interrupted. And you need to understand that my property is not yours to give away. The police are already on their way. I suggest you start moving Kevin's things out now. You wouldn't dare call the police on your own family. My mother gasped. I already did, and Mrs. Davidson is filming everything from across the street. How do you think it will look? respectable pillars of the community breaking into their son's house. The mention of Mrs. Davidson died, whose reputation in the community was impeccable, finally seemed to get through to them. I watched as they frantically began gathering Kevin's things, throwing them haphazardly back into boxes while Kevin protested weakly. The police arrived just as they were loading the last of the furniture back into the moving truck. I had already sent the security footage to the officers, along with documentation proving my ownership of the property. This is all a misunderstanding, my father tried to explain to the officers. We were just helping our son. Which son? One officer asked pointedly, glancing at the property documentation. Because according to this, the owner is Daniel Harrison, currently working in Japan, who specifically reported this as an unauthorized entry. My mother burst into tears, playing the role she'd perfected over years of enabling Kevin. We were just trying to help our family. Daniel has always been so selfish, never thinking about his brother's needs. Through the security camera, I watched as Mrs. Davidson walked over, phone in hand. I have video evidence of them using a spare key to enter without permission, moving furniture in, and explicitly stating their intention to give the property to their other son. Would you like to see it? The officers took statements from everyone, including Mrs. Davidson. No arrests were made, but a formal report was filed. My parents and Kevin were officially warned about trespassing, and I immediately had the locks changed. That evening, the emails and texts started flooding in. Mom, how could you humiliate us like this? The neighbors saw everything. Dad, your mother is devastated. Is this how we raised you to treat family? Kevin, thanks for ruining everything. I was finally going to get my life together. I ignored them all, instead sending a message to Mrs. Davidson. Thank you for your help. I'm having a security company install additional measures tomorrow. Her reply was swift. Anytime, dear. Family is important, but so are boundaries. Your parents needed this wake-up call. Over the next few days, I received calls from various family members, each taking sides in the drama. Aunt Sarah called to berate me for being selfish. Uncle Jim, who'd long disapproved of how my parents babied Kevin, sent a supportive message. My cousin Amy, who'd borrowed money from Kevin years ago and never seen it returned, simply texted, "About time someone stood up to them." A week later, I received a formal letter from my parents. Inside was the spare key I'd given them, along with a note: "Since you obviously don't trust us anymore, here's your key back. Don't expect us to check on your house again." I had the letter framed and hung it in my Tokyo apartment. A reminder that sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people who should respect them the most. 2 months after the incident, I finally returned to Seattle for a scheduled visit to our company's headquarters. The timing wasn't coincidental. I'd purposely waited until the dust had settled, though the family group chat remained conspicuously silent. As my taxi pulled up to my house, I noticed the for sale sign on my parents' lawn across town. Mrs. Davidson had kept me informed. Apparently they'd decided to downsize, claiming they needed the money to help Kevin get established. The irony wasn't lost on me. Inside my house, everything was exactly as I'd left it, protected by the new security system. But the silence felt different now, heavy with the weight of unspoken family tensions. I'd barely finished unpacking when my phone rang. It was my sister Laura, the only family member who'd remained neutral during the whole ordeal. "They're having a family dinner tonight," she said without preamble. "Mom's been asking if you'll come." I sighed, running a hand through my jet-lagged hair. "Let me guess, to discuss Kevin's future." Actually, Laura paused. "They're announcing the sale of their house. Mom's been crying about having to sell her garden, but they're determined to buy Kevin a condo." The familiar frustration bubbled up. A condo? They're selling their retirement home to buy Kevin a condo. I know Laura's voice was tired. Dad's taking an extra consulting job to cover the mortgage payments. They're convinced it's the only way to save Kevin. I thought about my parents, in their 60s, sacrificing their retirement dreams for my brother's continued dependence. What time is dinner? The family home looked smaller somehow, its well-maintained facade masking the financial sacrifice it represented. My mother opened the door, her smile wavering between genuine pleasure at seeing me and uncertainty about our standing. "Daniel," she hugged me briefly, stiffly, "we weren't sure you'd come." Inside, the tension was palpable. Kevin slouched in his usual spot on the couch, pointedly ignoring me while playing on his phone. My father stood by the fireplace, examining the family photos as if he'd never seen them before. Laura caught my eye from the kitchen, giving me a subtle nod of support. She'd always been the family mediator, trying to bridge the gaps between our parents' enabling and my increasing frustration with Kevin. Dinner was a masterclass in passive-aggressive conversation. My mother spoke about the house sale, as if it were a choice rather than a necessity, while my father kept mentioning his new consulting work with forced enthusiasm. Finally, over dessert, Kevin dropped his bombshell. "I've decided to start a tech company," he announced, as if declaring he'd discovered gravity. "That's why Mom and Dad are helping me get the condo. It'll be my home office." I nearly choked on my coffee. "A tech company? What's your experience in tech?" "I've been researching NFTs," Kevin said defensively. "And cryptocurrency is the future. Mom and Dad believe in my vision." I looked at my parents, seeing the desperate hope in their eyes. They wanted so badly to believe that this would be Kevin's breakthrough, just like they'd believed in his novel, his podcast idea, his brief stint as a life coach. "And the startup capital?" I asked, already knowing the answer. My mother brightened. "Well, that's the wonderful part. The house sale will cover the condo and provide seed money for Kevin's business. Isn't it exciting?" I set down my fork, choosing my next words carefully. "So you're selling your retirement home, taking extra work at 65, to fund another one of Kevin's schemes." "It's not a scheme," Kevin snapped. "Just because you're some big shot in Japan doesn't mean you know everything about business. I know enough to recognize when someone's taking advantage of our parents' generosity," I replied evenly. My father stood up abruptly. "That's enough. Daniel, if you came here just to criticize your brother's ambitions." "Ambitions?" I couldn't hold back anymore. "When has Kevin ever followed through on anything? The novel he's been writing for 10 years. The podcast equipment gathering dust in your basement. The life coaching certificates he never completed. At least I'm trying to build something." Kevin shouted, "While you just ran away to Japan." "I didn't run away." My voice was steel. "I built a career. I bought a house. I've offered to help you find work in tech multiple times. But you always have an excuse." My mother started crying. "Right on cue. Why can't you support your brother? We're doing this as a family." "No." I stood up, placing my napkin beside my half-eaten dessert. "You're enabling him, and you're destroying your own future in the process. I won't stand by and watch anymore." I pulled out my phone, pulling up an email I'd received that morning. "The company I work for is expanding its Seattle office. We're hiring entry-level developers, with paid training included." I slid the phone across to Kevin. "If you're serious about tech, here's a real opportunity. No startup capital needed. No risk to Mom and Dad's retirement." The silence that followed was deafening. Kevin stared at the phone like it might bite him, while my parents exchanged uncertain glances. "But my company," Kevin started, "isn't real," I finished. "It's another dream you're using to avoid real responsibility. Take the job offer, Kevin. Learn the industry before trying to revolutionize it." Laura, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. "He's right, Kev. This is a genuine opportunity. Better than risking Mom and Dad's house on a crypto scheme." Our parents looked lost, their carefully constructed plan crumbling around them. "But we've already listed the house," my mother said weakly. "Then unlist it," I replied, standing up. "Keep your retirement fund. Let Kevin stand on his own feet for once." As I walked to the door, Laura followed me. "That was either really brave or really stupid," she whispered. "Probably both," I admitted. "But someone had to say it." The next morning I received a text from Kevin. "When's the application deadline?" Maybe, just maybe, something had finally gotten through. 3 weeks after the family dinner confrontation, I was back in Tokyo when Laura sent me a photo that made me pause mid-meeting. It showed Kevin, clean-shaven and wearing a button-down shirt, sitting at a desk with a company ID badge around his neck. The caption read, "First day at the new job. You might want to check your email." I excused myself from the meeting and found Kevin's message waiting in my inbox. "Daniel, I wanted to say this before I lose my nerve. You were right about everything. The tech company idea was just another way to avoid real work, and I was willing to let mom and dad sacrifice everything to fund my latest escape plan. The training program is hard, hard than anything I've done before. Sometimes I want to quit, but for the first time in my life, I'm actually learning something real. I know this doesn't make up for trying to take your house, or for all the years of letting mom and dad enable me, but I hope it's a start. Kevin, I sat there, reading the email 3 times before responding. Keep going. The first month is the hardest. If you need help with the technical aspects, call me. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something. Laura kept me updated over the next few weeks. Our parents were struggling to adjust to the new dynamic. Mom had taken down the for sale sign, but kept making comments about how they could still help Kevin if his new job doesn't work out. Dad seemed relieved but uncertain, as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. Kevin, surprisingly, was the one who stood firm. I'm not taking their money anymore, he told Laura. Daniel was right. I need to do this on my own. The real test came a month later when Kevin faced his first major project deadline. I was on a video call with him at midnight Tokyo time, helping him debug some code, when our mother burst into his apartment, using her spare key. Kevin, honey, you're working too hard. Her voice came through clearly on the call. Why don't you take a break? I brought your favorite casserole. I watched on screen as Kevin turned to face her. Mom, I'm in the middle of something important, with Daniel, he added, turning his laptop so she could see me. Our mother's face fell slightly when she saw me. Oh, Daniel, I didn't realize. Well, I'll just leave this here then. Mom, Kevin's voice was gentle but firm. I need you to call before coming over. And, I think you should give me back the spare key. The silence that followed was heavy with years of ingrained patterns being broken. Our mother's face went through a range of emotions. Hurt, confusion, anger, before settling into something like resignation. You sound just like your brother now, she said, placing the key on his desk. Good, Kevin replied, because he's been right all along. After she left, Kevin turned back to the screen. That was harder than any coding problem. But necessary, I said. Now let's fix this bug before your deadline. We worked until 2 a.m. my time, but Kevin got his project submitted. The next day, his team leader sent me a message. Whatever you said to your brother, it worked. He's becoming one of our most dedicated junior developers. The family dynamic continued to shift over the following weeks. Our parents, forced to focus on their own lives, finally started planning the retirement they'd put off for years. Dad admitted that giving up the extra consulting work had helped his health. Mom joined a community garden project, channeling her need to nurture into growing vegetables instead of enabling Kevin. Laura organized a family video call to discuss Thanksgiving plans. It was the first time we'd all been on screen together since the house incident. Kevin sat in his new apartment, surrounded by programming books and sticky notes covered in code. Mom and Dad were in their living room, looking more relaxed than I'd seen them in years. Daniel, my father said, clearing his throat, your mother and I have been doing some thinking. We owe you an apology. I set down my coffee, surprised by the directness. We've always praised Kevin's dreams while taking your achievements for granted, he continued. We tried to give away your house because we were so used to you being the responsible one, the one who would understand and forgive us. We were wrong, my mother added softly, about so many things. Kevin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I have something to say too. I've been avoiding real responsibility my whole life, letting mom and dad clean up my messes. When you stopped me from taking your house, I was angry, but it was the wake-up call I needed. I looked at their faces on my screen. My parents finally confronting their role in enabling Kevin's dependency, Kevin accepting responsibility for his own life, Laura smiling proudly at the family's progress. I appreciate that, I said, finally, but actions speak louder than words. Let's see where we are in 6 months. Speaking of 6 months, Kevin interjected, I have some news. The company is sending me to Tokyo for training. Daniel, I was hoping we could meet up while I'm there. I felt a smile tugging at my lips. I think I could arrange that. As the call ended, Laura sent me a private message. You did it. You actually fixed our family by breaking it first. Maybe she was right. Sometimes things need to break before they can be rebuilt stronger. That night, I looked at the framed letter on my wall, the one returning my house key, and realized it represented more than just a boundary set. It was the moment our family's healing began, even if none of us knew it at the time. 6 months later, I stood in Tokyo's Haneda airport, watching as Kevin walked through the arrival gates, pulling a single suitcase and carrying a laptop bag. Gone was the oversized hoodie, an unkempt appearance. My brother looked like the professional he was becoming. "Welcome to Japan," I said, as we shared an awkward but genuine hug. "Thanks for letting me stay with you," he replied. "And not just for the apartment, for everything." During the train ride to my place, Kevin showed me his latest project documentation on his laptop. His code was clean, well commented, and showed real understanding. More importantly, his eyes lit up when he talked about his work. "The team lead says I might be ready for a promotion by year's end," he mentioned casually. "But I want to earn it first." Those words, "want to earn it," showed how far he'd come. Back home, our parents had fully embraced their retirement. Mom's community garden project had won a local award, and Dad had taken up woodworking, something he'd always wanted to try, but never had time for while managing Kevin's crises. Laura kept me updated with regular photos. Mom and Dad traveling in their RV, Kevin's apartment, gradually transforming into a proper home. The family gathering for dinners where cryptocurrency and get-rich-quick schemes were no longer the main topic. During Kevin's 2-week training in Tokyo, we spent evenings exploring the city, having conversations we should have had years ago. "I used to be jealous of you," he admitted one night over ramen. "Everything seemed to come easily to you." "Nothing came easily," I corrected him. "I just made it look that way, because I didn't expect anyone to bail me out if I failed." He nodded, understanding now. That's what I needed to learn. Success feels different when you earn it yourself. The night before Kevin's departure, we had a video call with the whole family. Mom showed off her garden's blue ribbons. Dad displayed his latest woodworking project, and Laura announced she was pregnant, making us all future uncles and grandparents. "Daniel," my mother said before we ended the call, "we've taken down that letter you framed." "The house key letter?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, we don't need a reminder of our mistakes anymore. We've learned our lesson." After the call, Kevin turned to me. "You know, I'm glad you stopped me from taking your house, not just because it forced me to grow up, but because I finally understand what a home means. It's not just property, it's a symbol of what you've achieved." Speaking of which, I smiled. "How's the apartment hunt going?" "Made the down payment last week," he grinned. "My own place, my own money, no crypto schemes required." The next morning at the airport, our goodbye was different from any we'd shared before. We were no longer the responsible older brother and the perpetual screw-up. We were just brothers, both making our way in the world. "Next time," I said, "bring Mom and Dad. I'll show them the Japan they couldn't see while they were worried about you." "They'd like that," he agreed. "They're different now. We all are." As I watched his plane take off, I thought about the journey our family had taken. Sometimes the hardest love is the one that sets boundaries, that refuses to enable, that forces growth through discomfort. My parents had needed to learn that lesson as much as Kevin had. Back in my apartment, I took down the framed letter that had started it all. Like my mother said, we didn't need that reminder anymore. Instead, I put up a new photo, one of Kevin and me in Tokyo, both smiling, both successful in our own rights, both finally grown up. The family group chat pinged with a message from Kevin. "Landed safely. Thanks for everything, big brother." Sometimes the best way to help family is to stop helping. I smiled and replied, "Sometimes the biggest act of love is saying no." And that's how our family learned that true support isn't about enabling dreams or fixing problems. It's about believing in someone enough to let them face their own challenges and build their own success. The end.